Okay, we finally got the king of DevTools, Guillermo Rauch from Vercel. We talk about why developer experience is the wrong metric,
Developer experience just for its own sake is actually a really bad fitness function.
how AI is changing DevTools,
I think every company is going to be an AI company.
why integrations are underappreciated,
The more we've polished and perfected our integrations, the more our business has grown.
how Guillermo hires,
So I try to look at, as much as I can, the growth curve of an individual.
and how to do business with massive companies as a startup.
And I remember thinking that is super extra boss mode, founder mode, advanced level of playing the game. Because it would have been so tempting to say, yes, run it all on us. When you're actually not ready, it could be devastating.
Grab a notepad and enjoy the episode. So I guess one of the things that I really wondered is what your actual kind of day-to-day looks like now, because I know you're known as a beast dev, but you have to run a company as well now.
Yeah, it's so funny because I do dogfood our products a lot, mostly during the weekends or holidays, etc. I literally just went viral with one of my V0s. I don't know if you saw it, Doom Captcha.
I played it.
I will be that person that remains grounded on the mission of the company. I don't want to distance myself from, if our mission is to empower developers and help them ship the best products, I have to have a feeling for, do I love this product? Does it motivate me to create? And can I genuinely recommend it to my friends, to family members, etc.? So I try to stick to the principle of, you have to understand the technology deeply. You have to stay super grounded. You have to understand the technology very deeply as well, the engineering of the products. But on the other hand, you have to also build a company, a business, a machine, so to speak. The way that I think about it is my job is to help grow and create products like Next.js. And also there's another product that's the Vercel company. And the Vercel company is like an invention machine. And our job is to, and I actually use engineering principles to do this. How can I streamline Vercel as a product? Meaning that if we hire somebody, they have a great time onboarding themselves to the company. It's like user onboarding, right? And if they have an idea, what is the path from idea to ship? Almost like the meta version. What we do with Vercel is help you go from idea to ship. And if you join Vercel, you probably have ideas around how to improve products, bring new products to life. So there's a whole side of me that optimizes that other meta product, which is Vercel, the company.
This episode is brought to you by WorkOS. If you're building a dev tool, at some point your customers are going to start asking you for enterprise features. WorkOS offers you single sign-on, skim provisioning, and audit logs out the box. WorkOS is trusted by Perplexity and Vercel, as well as Workbrew, a homebrew management startup that I recently interviewed. I just told Mike that WorkOS is the sponsor, and this is what Mike said.
Yeah, so WorkOS isn't paying me any money for this. I pay WorkOS money for this, but WorkOS is one of the best developer tools I've ever used. It's the documentation and the experience with building with them is so good. I initially was almost okay, this seems expensive, but then I built an integration with them in about 20 minutes that I had spent 2 days bang my head off the wall trying to build it directly with Okta. And then with WorkOS, I then have many SSO providers supported instead of just one. So yeah, for me, WorkOS is one of the nicest developer experiences I've encountered in the last 5 years, probably. And it's not surprising because a bunch of the developer team are ex-GitHub and therefore very good at their job.
Go to workos.com to learn more. Yeah, and actually, we didn't talk about this before, but one of the things I was curious about is about kind of how you hire as well, because I know you have a lot of real insanely talented people at Vercel.
Yeah, I'm a big guy for betting on people. So I try to look at, as much as I can, the growth curve of an individual. Are they, picking up skills in their career fast? Are they hungry? Are they putting themselves out there? Are they shipping? So I try to think a lot about is this someone that I could see myself collaborating with on shipping stuff, right? And making an impact in the world. I try to think of every hire as a huge responsibility to myself, even if it's just, you know, we're at over 500 folks now. So if it's the last person that joins and they're, in a deeply nested team in the hierarchy, I still feel a huge amount of responsibility to that person because it's like an investment. We are going to make it work together. We're going to grow together. You're going to have amazing tools, resources, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you also have to have that other side of you of like, I really want to make it. I want to push. I want to make myself visible, present. I want to, you know, something that stands out to me about people that no matter what their age, experience, et cetera, is just putting yourself out there. The worst thing you can do is hide, like, have sort of like be paralyzed by not asking the right questions to make progress in whatever you have to do. And so I pay attention to that a fair amount. Communication skills, like ultimately, as AI continues to make progress in making our lives easier in creating things, like actually the actual crafting of things, communication becomes even more important, right? Like on one hand, first of all, you are communicating with AI to get your job done, which means like you are prompting these things, and you're also communicating with individuals, and most I think actually in the form of like shipping things, like hey, like communicating with the customers, understanding their pain points,
Yeah.
translating those pain points into results. I do believe a lot in people that are very full stack. Like even if your job is not going to do every job, like I'm not going to give you the line of like we're a startup, so you have to wear many hats. I think the capability to wear many hats is hugely appreciated because it speaks to flexibility, speaks to like understanding the task and the mission end to end. So I like that idea of like, I'm going to hire someone that is good at speaking with customers, is good at taking feedback, is good at maybe has some design skills, has taste about how they present the final pixels on the screen, and maybe has business sense, right? Like, so I have to grow this thing. I have to like make it a fair trade between the sort of like recipient of the product or service and what I get in return, et cetera. So the more you can complement those skills, and I think probably sound like a broken record, but like it's probably one prompt away to at least immerse yourself a little bit, even if it's superficial, in other areas of the business or the job that you're maybe not the most used to. So maybe you're a front end engineer. You're literally today one prompt away with your AI assistants of choice to strengthen your skills in 100 other dimensions. So that ability to be full stack in that manner is hugely appreciated.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess there's like a almost like specific example of like Jared seems like an incredibly capable person.
Yeah, full
And
stack end
like
to end. So our VP of AI, engineer, designer, marketer, everything like, and I actually call that recursive founder mode. If I can spot the people that have that founder DNA and understand that at Vercel, it's like alphabet on steroids, where by you joining, you're complementing yourself with a lot of other people, and the resulting creation is so much greater than the sum of the parts because it has all these integrations. In fact, Jared runs V0, and we're seeing a lot of traction with V0, especially because of that deep integration with Vercel. And so you have those situations actually where like you might be a super independent thinker, founder, you just want to do your own thing, but then you realize that if the API adapters are right, if like Vercel is actually giving you the right interface to work at and develop your, business tools, skills, products, then it's actually much better to do it at Vercel than do it on your own. So to your point, identifying the Jareds of the world and empowering them and making sure they have everything they need to succeed is a big part of what we do.
yeah. And V0, what a product. It's very exciting. I have to say that I thought it'd be fun to just play around with it before the call, and like within like it was like less than an hour, like I made this little project where I could like send over you all the questions, you could comment like, and not just like a UI, but like with a database integrated with Neon, and it's incredibly cool.
Yeah, I was blown away because what you created was actually legitimately useful. My team told me that you'd created it right before the call with V0, and like it kind of blew me away. Not to, of course, toot our own horn, but
Yeah.
legitimately. So what I thought was, first of all, like I go on a lot of these podcasts, and like this is actually the most useful version of prep that I've gotten, and it looked good. And it had your style and your brand on it. So yeah, I think this proof point of software is now becoming this very like fluid thing. It used to be very rigid. And I think chapter one of Vercel was make it less rigid, right? Like we have a billboard that says we're the you can deploy on Fridays cloud. Like it's okay. Like you can deploy frequently. I shared a story a lot of what one of my favorite brands in the world that became a Vercel customer. I remember doing this, and part of you were asking like what a day to day looks like for me. We bring customers in to talk to the company a lot. In this particular case, they were talking to the executive team because they're a very important customer. And one of the things that they talked about was when we asked them, "What has Vercel done for you?" Like open-ended questions. What good have we brought to you? And of course, we also asked what bad have we done. And one of the things they pointed out was like, "Look, we used to deploy once a quarter, and because the holiday season is very big for us, one quarter of the year was actually kind of maybe blocked off because of like code freeze. So we kind of deploy a couple times a quarter, you know, like that's just the normal." And if you heard what this brand was, you would be like, this is actually one of the most iconic technology rooted companies in the world, but they were paralyzed by their fear to ship software. And so chapter one of Vercel was like, now they're deploying several times a week. In fact, that for me is even like you should be deploying 100 times a day, but like, everyone has their own sort of journey with that. Google deploys a million times a day, and like some companies deploy once a year. So like we need to bridge that gap. And I mentioned that we went from very rigid software, and now it's sort of like liquefying because okay, now that thing that felt fixed in time and space is now constantly being edited. And that was kind of like the initial actually mission of the company or tagline. It was like I called now our original deployment platform real-time global deployments. Global in nature because like making things fast everywhere is so important to me, but real time, and because of my background in socket IO and real-time communication, real time, I didn't think people had yet heard of what I could possibly mean of like real time and deploying, but the idea was you make it so fast and agile that you're constantly editing your product in real time. And lo and behold, to some degree, we've achieved success in that mission. But I think AI is making it even like, way more fluid because AI is making it such that you don't even have to do that expensive translation process of intent to the data structures, the algorithms, the libraries, the modules. In fact, you were asking about how I talk to the product. I discover a lot of libraries through D0 because the AI knows about every module that exists. And I'm totally online. I spend a lot of time on X, so I keep track of like, oh, there's this new library for this, there's this new thing for this, but it's hard. Like you have to actually, like yeah, even then, like I might miss out on things. So having the AI act as like the expert recommendation system of how to implement my idea, on one hand, actually feels a little like I'm not gonna deny that it does feel a little weird. A lot of people ask me like, what's gonna happen to my job and like things like that, and like I mostly like just chuckle because I believe that jobs are safer than they've ever been because you know it's the creativity that drives these creations and it's the intent still that drives these creations. So there has to be a human in charge directing the orchestra. But I do think it's a little weird in the sense of like you have to give up a little bit of like you're used to like handcrafting every line of code. And now you have to let go a bit and realize that like, hey, like I can just tell the AI to do it, and that is a change for the industry. I think the one thing that even just popped in my mind was I remember the reception to Prettier. So Prettier is a JavaScript formatter. It used to be that people formatted code and made it look like visually pretty on their own. The pre-automatic formatting days, and in a lot of pull requests would be people nitpicking each other like, no, like this should be it should be in a different line. It doesn't look clear. And so Prettier came along and just like it almost seemed like overnight it eliminated all this decision paralysis, all these pointless conversations. I even remember being marginally upset that they added configuration because I was like, you were the one that was supposed to save us from the pointless conversations. So like now we can have conversations about the configuration.
Nitpick the config.
Exactly. But still, it's done its job, right? It freed us to think about other things. And I think that's the ultimate value of AI is that it's going to free us to think about other things. And it will take some adapting because, yes, we were used to formatting every line of code by hand. We are still largely, I think, industry wide, used to writing every line of code by hand, choosing every library, like doing all the due diligence and whatnot. And we're going into a world where we can delegate a lot of this. So it's exciting.
Yeah, and actually, a kind of related question on V0 is like, kind of who is going to use V0 kind of now and in the future? Because when I use Cursor, I'm kind of I feel like I'm to some extent I'm coding still, like well, I mean I am generally.
You are, yeah.
But then V0, I'm like, I don't know if I really looked at the code very much when I was creating
Yeah.
that, if I'm honest.
Yeah, my mindset there is like code first versus code last. So Cursor is a fantastic tool. Everybody loves it, but it's code first to your point. Like you have to like set up the IDE or in your repo and you understand code. What V0 gets me really excited about is that it's still producing code behind the scenes and you even get to see it, which I think is an important property because AIs are not perfect and they
Yeah.
do require auditing, right? Like you also don't want to relinquish control so much that like the AI just goes off and like builds the Skynet. But is that idea of like let's put the design first, let's put your ideas, creativity. We're building a lot of features to make it a lot easier to like infuse your design system, qualities, colors, preferences, enriching the context so that what you create is in a certain style. So we look at it as more there's actually one of our most popular blog posts on the Vercel blog is about what a design engineer is. It's funny because we've written about so many different things, like awesome, like technical deep dives, React, Next.js. But I think by sheer traffic, one of our most popular blog posts is what is a design engineer and why is this role so important? Why it's changed Vercel and I think the industry so profoundly. And it's a role of a person that infuses both sort of the design and aesthetic sense, but can actually ship and have influence over the products. And that combination in the industry actually has been traditionally very rare. In fact, I'll tell you what, like when I first came to the Valley, it was rumored that these people existed. It was like it's spoken of as like myths. Oh yeah, there's like Rasmus at Dropbox who is like writing C++ over here, but also like designing every pixel over here. And that to me always felt like the natural end state of software, by the way. Like, yes, it was rare, it's becoming less rare, but it does feel like the end state of software because like even borrowing from like Steve Jobs, like intersection of like liberal arts and computer science, I think people that really appreciate the quality of products know that design led is the best way to build. Is the most empathetic way to build because you're thinking about the customer, you're thinking about what they're going to see. The vast majority of people just do not understand code. They do not understand how things are built, but they do understand quality. They want things to be fast. They want things to be intuitive. A huge part of the Vercel business has been built on the fact that customers can prove that ROI for themselves. It's not just that they ship more frequently. They come to us and they show us the receipts. I had a customer show me the other day a chart from Google Webmaster Tools. It's like how many pages are crawled, they switch to Next.js and like it goes like this. And so literally like they released pent up energy in their business by making it more crawlable, faster for consumers, etc. And I think when you think design led and when you're thinking about the front end first, you end up thinking more about what's actually good for your product, for your business, etc. And that's kind of how B0 proposes that you should build software.
Yeah, and I feel like this is quite related to something that you said on another interview that I was listening to. And at first I was kind of like surprised by it, but it makes total sense. Where you were saying that like you are not in the business of like developer experience at all costs. And
Exactly. 100%. Yeah, developer experience just in its own, for its own sake, it's actually a really bad fitness function. It's like the kind of thing that makes species go extinct, right? Like, and I say this as a representative and sort of like hopeful representative of the developer species. If we're just building stuff that is good for us, meaning like it's pleasurable to like write and whatever, like absolutely critical feature. Like, yes, I want to have a system that's responsive, feels good, etc. But it has to be good for another customer. If you're working on DevTools, the mental model that I use is you have two customers. You have your most direct customer that is the developer or whatever, and that developer is building software for somebody else. And so you have to have that somebody else in mind. I would argue it's even more important. I would argue that the way that markets shake out, and because ultimately customer is king, it's been proven time and time and time again. Like there's in other domains, we've run the hypothesis of like, maybe we are more important. No, the children are wrong. Like the customer is more important. So you will find that you might get like the early traction, the early love, etc. And yet it's just not self-sustaining because it's not economically self-sustaining to have only that one customer in mind. So yeah, I think this is a really good call. Try to think about the end user as much as you can, and work backwards from that.
yeah, it's I think this was like one of the most kind of interesting things um in kind of like reading about how you think about things. And one other thing that you talked a lot about was like kind of integrations. And it kind of at first maybe seems like I felt people don't talk, at least, I've interviewed 100 people, DevTools founders, and integrations doesn't come up that much as like a
That's
key
good
thing.
feedback. It's good to know because I do think that there's legitimate alpha there then, because I thought, sometimes I'm just repeating stuff that everybody knows. Like I want to bring something helpful to people. And I will tell you that the more we've polished and perfected our integrations, the more our business has grown. And that your job is not to solve every problem in the world. I can actually tell you for V0, this is going to play out even more again, because one, I believe that software is going to shrink. We're going to have more software that's smaller, more ephemeral, more personal, meaning you're not going to create like a gigantic, like Swiss Army knife software for every problem that you have. And that's a very positive thing, because we have come from the Army knife, Swiss Army knife software approach to the world. I'm actually pointing there because there's a very successful company right next to ours called Salesforce. And Salesforce has made a entire category out of creating vast platforms of doing everything under the sun and solving every kind of problem. And that's going to continue to exist. And I think a lot of companies definitely need that. And I think there's also going to be a new wave of like, maybe I don't need to try and like tame the beast to try to do this simple thing that I need. I can actually just generate the software that does that simple thing that I need more spontaneously. And the two will coexist, you know? But going back to integrations, what's going to happen is a lot of this software will be thin layers of UI on top of vast seas of integrations.
Hmm.
And agents will even deepen that. One thing I've observed about LLMs is that LLMs cannot produce a gigantic corpus of coherent software all at once. Most immediate example is it wouldn't be efficient, nor would it actually work with the state of the technology today for the AI to produce both React and the software that you need, right? Like it's just not how the world works. Like the way that we think about building things is like, what abstraction can I build on top of? What can I reuse? And actually, LLMs think very much this way. They try to build on top of infrastructure that already exists. And so what happens is a lot of the alpha with AI is having the AI connect all these dots, bring all these things together. And so for V0, we're working on not only continuing to sort of extend that corpus of infrastructure that the agent can piggyback on, but also bringing in more integrations into sort of Vercel, the database ecosystem, all of the tools that have already been built that don't have to be reinvented from scratch.
Yeah, and it seems like this kind of, because you kind of stayed very narrow, you're able to like do really high quality software, and then kind of when people come to you and they say, oh, we use Salesforce for like we run our entire business through Salesforce, and you're like, oh yeah, that's fine, because we don't need to replace everything that you do. You can just
Yeah, there's something to the incremental nature of software that I find fascinating. So if you try and position your whether it's your product or your infrastructure as a rip and replace of a thing that has been optimized for 3 decades, you're probably NGMI. However, if you have a additive value to the world, an additive proof point, an insertion point into that ecosystem, and that's why integrations again is so important. Because if you're not going to rip and replace everything because we've agreed axiomatically that is a bad idea from a sales pitch standpoint, is horrible. I've tried. Hey, we're everything for you. Can you please shut down everything? Successful business? No, it's just not going to work. It's energetically very inefficient. It's not my cup of tea because I like quality over quantity. I just like to build things that are like amazing for fewer things and like boil the ocean.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work. So what does work is you build something that's additive, and by definition it has to be well integrated into other things, because that's actually how you make it relatable. So you say, oh, well, I'm going to help automate very intelligent outreach to my most successful customers when they perform certain actions. Like, for example, it's very important to me that if a customer is in e-commerce, but recently they've started to play with the Vercel templates for AI chatbots, I would like to have a conversation there. Actually, I joke, put me in, coach. Like, I love to talk to our existing customers about how they can improve their businesses with more of our products, or like with bringing in other things to Vercel. So imagine that you're building that product. The way that I would pitch it to you is not like, we're the replacement for Salesforce. So start shutting down those contracts and turn away all those steak dinners, and burn your Dreamforce tickets. What I would say is, look, we connect into Salesforce, we connect into Snowflake, and we have this very opinionated take on how we solve this problem. We keep the human in the loop, so it's not random acts of AI slop plastered over your users. And here's a case study of how, like, I've already helped this other customer. Oh, and by the way, this is how I use it myself to continue to improve our products, to improve retention, etc. So that way of like pitching is just so much more effective. And I think for a lot of people, it's like an exercise. Like, it's like doing crunches. Like, it's painful to get into that mindset of like, you don't have to do everything for everybody. And like, it's actually nice to turn down and say like, nope, we don't do that. Nope, we don't do that. Not yet. Not yet. No. This is what we do.
So actually, Guillermo, like, obviously you have like such a talented team and stuff, right? So like, you must get all the time people like, we need our own vector database. Like, how do you know when you really don't need to build the vector database, or you're like, yes, we we need to build a vector database?
Great question. Great question. I'll tell you a couple mental models that I use. One is feature product platform. Feature product platform. That's like sort of the hierarchy of I'm in the business of building platforms. I'm in the business of eventually solving a wide range of problems for like lots of companies. And of course, I have that because of my platform, I have that natural sort of gravitas towards customers see that we solved the hosting piece and the CDN piece and the WAF piece. Okay, why don't you also solve this other problem that I have? Oh, and by the way, I love you guys, and here's a bag of money, right?
Yeah.
Like there is that conversation. And so, but realistically, because I'm building a platform, there's a distinction between being in the product building mindset and being in the platform building mindset. The product building mindset, which is actually the most helpful when you start a company, because you have to prove that you do one thing excellently, is different from I have to create integration hooks, extensibility hooks. I need to, for example, right now we're investing a lot in our marketplace. We're investing a lot in helping startups build on top of Vercel. There's companies like Mintlify or Dub that are creating multi-tenant infrastructure systems by leveraging what we've already built. For example, Vercel can issue TLS certificates to create secure connection to arbitrary domain names faster than anybody on the market. And so we expose that as a platform primitive so that companies can give their own customers their own domain names, extremely fast onboarding experiences, etc. And so I'm allocating a lot of time to that sort of platform building side of Vercel and less to like, let's ship a vector database. Now, when I do identify that the platform foundations are changing, and the first thing that I noticed about AI is that AI in itself was going to be a platform. And that's when we started saying, well, it's going to make a lot of sense to create the AI SDK. It's a new product, but in reality, if you think about what the AI SDK is doing, I just shared yesterday, I learned about this from a cardiac surgeon, that they use this product, which is like the ChatGPT for medicine. And it's used by, turns out, I didn't even know about this, 250,000 doctors in the USA. That product was created because we created the primitives for AI products. It's one of those things where like, it's emergent behavior. You don't know how people are going to use what they're going to create, but you do have to facilitate the building blocks. And so we said, AI is going to be so important of a platform that we have to go in once again in product building mode. We created the AI SDK, we created V0. And the hope is that this will also bolster the Vercel platform as a whole. I don't think that there's going to be one agent in the world of AI. There's not going to be one V0. There's going to be probably hundreds of thousands. We're actually open sourcing. We have our AI chatbot template can give you a head start. Even in code generation, we just added Python support for code interpreting. We have an open source version of V0 essentially, where you can take pieces of it. I actually just heard also yesterday, an entrepreneur came to our office and he was saying, this product you're looking at, I just took a lot of pieces from that template. And so we're in the business of dog fooding the platform, creating these products. I'm very proud that V0 is like full stack end-to-end Vercel. It uses databases from the Vercel marketplace like Neon and Upstash, Upstash Vector. It uses connectivity into the clouds. It uses products from actually all three big clouds. We use AWS Bedrock. We use some things from Azure. We use some things from Gemini. And so creating this process is allowing us to put ourselves in the shoes of a customer. And I think there's going to be a lot of these that are going to create those AI native products of the future. And that's when like, it's a big deal. To your point, like it's a big deal for me to say like, and a new product initiative begins. Like you have to be kind of like almost like scared in a way. Because if you're extending your product surface endlessly, you might just be shipping a lot of slop. And that's scary.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it somehow does feel very kind of Vercelli, and it doesn't feel like it's a step away somehow, even though you weren't, I guess, like you weren't like an AI company. I don't know if you call yourself an AI company now,
I
but
think every company is going to be an AI company. That's how
yeah.
strongly I believe in. That's why I mentioned the instant
Mm,
that I realized. Some people say we realized it early. Some people, I don't know. I don't know if it's early or not. The instant that I realized that AI was going to be, it's kind of like I remember back in Argentina when I would assemble my computer. In order to use software, I had to freaking assemble my own computer first and put in the hard drive and put in the motherboard and put in all the cables and the CPU and later the video card. I used Voodoo video card or whatever I was called. And it turns out that like AI is not one of those fundamental substrates. Is if the cloud is like a global computer, there's now the sort of AI processing unit. And if you don't expose that, and if you don't compute on top of that, like I don't know that you can call yourself a software company in the future. And so right now we're special casing them and we're calling them AI companies because these are the pioneers that said, I'm not going to build with just the hard drive and the CPU. It actually maps very neatly into when you think about the big winners of the previous generation of cloud. What were they? They were S3, object storage, like the hard drive of the cloud. EC2 is the CPU of the cloud. The memory, like RAM, is Elasticache, Dynamo, whatever, right? But now it turns out like it's like a computer that couldn't run Crisis, to use the meme. Like a computer without the capability to run AI is a computer that's kind of useless. And like it's funny because like over the years I did move on from computer to computer because of chasing software. When I first adopted the Mac, I was actually pursuing the very first time I got one of these, it was because of an app called TextMate. TextMate was a fast, beautiful editor. And I remember drooling over the screenshots. And I was like, I need to replace all of that hardware so that it can run TextMate. And what's going to happen to every company in the world and every cloud hyperscaler in the world is that their customers are going to ditch them if they cannot facilitate being that sort of like AI operating system, if they cannot run the inference, if they cannot facilitate the building of those applications, if they don't have the SDKs, if they don't make it easy too, because like the AI world, like we've already overcomplicated the heck out of it, right? Like to your point on vector databases and RAG and tag and whatever, like there's like a new thing every night. And so Vercel has that opportunity in true Vercel sense of like try and bring simplification to that chaos.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense now. And kind of related, how do you think that DevTools need to be thinking about AI kind of like going forward?
Yeah, I'll tell you a couple of things. When I started Vercel, I realized that there was a type of customer that was better for us. It took me a lot of like trial and error, but I realized early stage startups that were building net new products, obviously a home run. Companies that were building new adjacencies, not the core product, we weren't ready for that. Companies that were building new adjacencies, like the experimental labs and whatnot, amazing customers as well. I realized later on that like, oh, that's not how I get all of Facebook because Facebook uses us for this one division. Like, as entrepreneurs, we're very like, oh yeah, one day I'm gonna be running Facebook.com because this team at Facebook uses my thing, but like very good customer to have. And then later on, as you mature a little bit more, I think you have the opportunity to start like biting at chunks of more important workloads. And typically it's gonna be companies that are not like Silicon Valley native because they actually I'm obviously very biased towards San Francisco, but like it's awesome to be able to partner with the people that are like sweating the details of like front end every day and every night. If you're a company that's been in a more traditional business and you're now wanting to leapfrog into the future, right? And so there's a very clear mapping to that to the AI world. If you're building DevTools, you're going to have startups that are building like net new products that assume that AI is a given. There's going to be people that are like testing the waters with AI. You have to be careful with those because like some of those are like they're going to like define the future of your company, and some of those are actually going to like you should have them, but like don't build up unnecessary like dreams and hopes of like, oh yeah, there's that AI experimental team at freaking like Wells Fargo, and like they are promising they're going to renew all of banking worldwide with AI, and it might as well happen. But it's no secret that every major company in the world has a top-down mandate to go and play with AI, and so I partner with those teams, but it's very important to understand that like it's experimental.
Mm.
And then the other one is actually very, 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 very exciting because enterprises are not going to be the ones that like move immediately into the most risky thing, and that's why they're enterprises and that's why they're successful. But at some point they're going to want to leapfrog, and you have to be ready for that transition. You have to be ready to have the maturity, the sophistication, the ease of use, all of the above, so that you're not just fixated in experimental stuff. And one of the most important, I would guess, like milestones in Vercel was when we started getting that takeoff velocity of like, oh, now we run more of the internet that is less the Wild West, so to speak.
Yeah, so it's like I think you guys, I think you've publicly said you run Walmart.com, right? Or
So Walmart uses Next.js. We run Under Armour. We run Asics. We run Nintendo. We run some of the
yeah,
biggest retailers in the world, some of the largest grocery stores in the world. And getting those was like a ton of work of maturing the technology. We couldn't have done that in the very, very early days of the company. Another kind of customer is fascinating is when you can run a mission critical workload of a very, very large scale up. It's also a very exciting sort of for us like Zapier. We run like huge parts of Zapier. We run Notion's entire marketing site. We run OpenAI's marketing site. Like when you get to like very, very large scale, very high traffic, but it's still sort of like not like 10 layers of like procurement, legal, and like that kind of work that you have to do.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense. And I guess it's like the point between like experimental. I guess there doesn't need to be like a real strong kind of like use case budget. It's like people are just happy to play with it. But like the difference is like you need to be there, and you don't necessarily want to run your whole business, make your whole business decision based on like an
Yes,
experiment.
correct. And I actually see a lot of founders make the mistake. Another anecdote that is really cool is I remember my friend who's the co-founder and CTO of Auth0. We're both excited
Argentinian
about
mafia, right?
exactly. We're both excited about this one tool that was coming to market. And I remember he showed me the email that this founder replied with. So he had done the outreach saying, "Oh, I want to run all of Auth0 on top of this thing." And the founder replied with, "We're not ready for that. Message me in end of months." And I remember thinking like that is like super extra boss mode, founder mode, advanced level of playing the game. Because it would have been so tempting to say, yes, run it all on us when you're actually not ready. It could be devastating. You could let them down. I've now seen this a lot with there's so many gigantic companies that in our past were like, well, I would love to go all in on Vercel. And my answer to that has been, let's do it incrementally so that we prove ROI for you and for us. We don't boil the ocean. And we kind of master the expertise of like how to bring massive workloads, even one page at a time. Where, for example, Vercel acts as a CDN and like only like the first page is on Vercel and the rest is proxy passed to the existing workload. So having your ability to like modulate your own success and your own ambition is also really important. You have to, the hardest thing about being a founder is that you have to modulate ambition and realism. Realism is how can I actually do an exceptional job for this customer and deliver value today? And I know that it's going to have the highest degree of availability, security, durability, feature richness, etc. And on the other hand, the ambition of like, you know, everyone thinks of like Silicon Valley as the HBO Silicon Valley show of like sell big, go big or go home, like conquer the stars. You have to have that too. And so that's where like good taste and discernment and integrity, these are like the most important values for founders. They're very important values for employees as well when you hire. That balance of like realism and ambition and integrity and ethics and honesty and quality and pride and craft, very important values as well to have in your in your toolbox.
Yeah, I was almost gonna ask you, like, how do you, well, what rule is there to kind of figure this stuff out? And it's like, it's funny because I spoke to Taylor Otwell as well, and I asked him about taste, and it's like, it seems like, these kind of like successful DevTools founders like yourself and Taylor, it's like taste is actually quite key.
Yeah, I believe everything can be learned. Um, I remember this from a close partnership with actually one of my first employees at an older startup, TJ, who taught me that you could be both a phenomenal designer and engineer. Like you can just do both things. And I remember asking, like, okay, but like, did it just come from the heavens? No, I learned. Like I inspire myself. I look at a lot of stuff. Another very useful skill to develop taste is be just super honest with yourself. Invite honesty from customers and peers. Invite them to actually like say exactly what they think. Even catch them in their hesitation of like, oh, that's cool. Like, well, tell me about like, do you actually like love this thing? Like, do you use it? Is it garbage? You can just not gonna hurt my feelings. Like, and then when you have enough samples in that sample set of like, this is what people actually like, or this is what good looks like. What this is what good sounds like. That's how you actually form good taste when it comes to product building. And then on the question of like, how do you hire people where you can assess that they have these values? That one is, I think, the hardest one. And like the only recipe is again like collecting large sample sets of data. There's heuristics of like the kinds of questions that you can ask. I always tell people when you hire and you hire from big name companies, the tendencies for people to over embellish their contributions. The reality is that for really successful tech companies, they are legitimately like rocket ships. They're like the starship. They're rare. When they're successful, they're overwhelmingly successful. When they're successful, they have such market pull that they can even make mistakes. They can like product market fit tends to like repair and replenish and reinvigorate energy into the company and into the mission so naturally that it doesn't mean that these companies can fall asleep at the wheel, but it does mean that when you have somebody that worked there, it's hard sometimes to disentangle what the contribution to the rocket ship was actually about. Like, were they sitting on a stool in the corner of the rocket ship and like just like watching and like like ooh,
Big head.
like or cheering like nice launch, or were they freaking like sweating bullets in the control room and designing the engine, right? Like, and like doing the last minute repairs and like showing up at like at the incident call when something doesn't go great and like doing the iterations and so what I've learned is to like try to go very very deep on understanding that kind of thing and the reality between what you've already done when it comes down to evaluating past work, and then evaluating future work is the other important one, which is like what does that slope look like for future improvement.
Mm. Yeah, this is really interesting, and I want to ask you two last questions, but just one thing that just occurred to me while you were saying it is at the very beginning you were talking about like how you want people to actually put stuff out there and ship it, and then it's like you're talking about kind of taste of like is actually from the feedback that you get and the patterns you see, and it's like if you don't actually put stuff out there, then you can't develop that kind of taste.
You really have to put yourself out there. I think the more you can ship and create and make that a part of who you are. As again, I think the expectation with AI is going to be that everybody can cook, is sort of say, like everybody can
Yeah.
contribute. And so
Yeah.
it's going to be harder, I think, in the future to hide behind that fog of war of contribution, if that makes sense. Of like,
Yeah.
well, it wasn't clear if that person was like just like got into the rocket ship through the back door, and like, or that person like actually like shipped substantial contributions to that and whatnot. And so I think the future looks very transparent from where I see from my vantage point, right? Like even circling back to like the idea of like building products in real time, it does seem like increasingly X and getting feedback from customers in real time and responding with fixes and products and features in real time. Like it does feel like we're creating software as a community together.
Mm.
And all of this is mediated by and modulated by feedback. And like, and so it's gonna, again, it's gonna be hard to say like, oh yeah, like I did a ton of work. You can't really see it, but like it's trust me, bro, like it exists. So that I've been thinking a lot about that in the context of like that idea of like building as you think almost, and building as customers think, and in that conversation with them.
Yeah, that's it makes sense. It's like I don't know, like imagining like a sushi chef like at the table, just like doing it in front of you, like, oh yeah,
How was
how'd you
that?
like?
And
Yeah,
they're paying attention or tuning into like your reaction,
yeah.
and is the person full or not? Like, is that, yeah, 100%.
Okay, two last questions. So the first one is going to be advice that you have for DevTools founders. Very broad question.
Yeah, I think I mentioned some of it i- in in the conversation. Something that maybe comes to mind is keep things really simple, integrate your product very deeply into how you present the product. So I recently went to, I'm just gonna say it because they did such a phenomenal job. If you go to browserbase.com, they're creating
Yeah.
uh, developer tools and infrastructure for browser automation, and the product is in the marketing. Like literally, there's just a big page with a button, and then you press that button and you start using this virtual headless web browser that you can talk to with AI. Actually, another company has done this extremely well is livekit.io. Livekit also provides the infrastructure for AI companies, but in the form of like WebRTC and like real time audio video. And if I remember correctly, you can just like live test speaking to an agent, and it's like the most natural real time conversation possible. So these are two examples of like, well, there's no explaining to do. Like you just go and you feel the you're almost signed up to the product. And so that blending of marketing, product, education, documentation, it even speaks to the prior insight of like, this is the job now. Like, we're all full stack, we all build experiences, and we deeply integrate them, and we're responsible for every dimension of it. It's not that, oh, I'm just the guy that built like the super cool like WebRTC thing. I'm just over here. Like the job is for somebody else. Like, I don't know, like you'll figure it out. And like, oh, we have a shit marketing website, but like it doesn't matter because like the tech is great. That feels like the 1990s where like software was so scarce that there was one vendor in the world that could do the kind of database that you needed, and they had to ship a mainframe computer to your office or data center to like actually procure the software. Things are moving at such a pace now that you even have to look at your communication with the customer and the way that you present yourself as latency, frankly. Like the page might have loaded faster, but like if I'm not grokking what the hell you're building, then if we actually have a very holistic latency measurement, then your P99 is 2 months. You know what I mean?
That makes so much sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
You could have the fastest website in the world, but if it's just
Yeah.
confusing, then
You're not getting the signal through. Yeah.
okay. And last question is, are there any kind of dev tools that you're really excited about right now?
Oh, I just spoil it with those two because those they're doing.
You can
they're
have
doing
you
great.
can have an extra go.
I'm very excited about all the things that I'm seeing being built on top of the AI SDK. So there's this tool that's coming out. Like speaking of real time, like I was literally talking to the founder today. So Lenguin.ai. So they're doing automatic translation and localization with AI. I was like, it's one of those products where you're like, where were you all my life? Duh, of course someone was gonna do it. And by the way, this is why I'm so excited about entrepreneurs building with AI, because I legitimately think there's millions of obvious things to be built right now. And this is one that is, and again, to their credit, these two guys are like so cracked, like it's obvious in retrospect and it's obvious to them, but like, why wouldn't I have CI/CD for AI driven human in the loop localization? Like it's just the most obvious thing in the world. And so these people are very much doing what I was mentioning is the future of building. They build in public, great taste, great communication skills, and easy to understand products, and open source. A lot of this is just like out in the open. And yeah, I'm just super excited about this one.
Amazing. And yeah, thank you so much. That was awesome.